welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. This is episode number 3, and this is one that I'm personally really excited about. This is the life and times of Ryan Dutton. I'm Brad Thompson, who's going to be hosting today, which feels weird. Yeah, considering I'm in your casa, mate. I feel a bit strange taking the lead.
Mi casa, su casa, as they say.
Here we go. Mate, we're going to dive straight into it.
Yeah.
Who is Ryan Dutton? And I've specifically put away from work. Like, who are you?
It's a tricky one because work is so integral to who I am, and anyone who knows me just knows me as the fitness guy, the coach. You know, it's such a big part of who I am, and it sounds pretty deep actually. But for a long time, I probably lost who I was a little bit to work. You know, I'm not sure if you've ever felt that way, where I got so entrenched in what I was doing that you kind of forget what you're into, forget what your hobbies are, and you know. A big hobby of mine is obviously training as well, but it's so closely linked to what I do for work that it kind of is very encompassing. But I think I am someone who's definitely madly passionate about his work, someone who's driven to perform at his best physically, and someone who is also on a mission, more recently so, to be the best dad he can be. They're probably the 3 pillars of my life right now, I would say. Nice. Work, training, and being a really good dad. But alongside that, you know, in the down times, I do love a pint with mates, you know. I love a occasional night out. We love our house and techno stuff, me and my mates. That's kind of what we grew up on. So we love the occasional rave. I also love sports, golf and football being the main two. I played golf for 2 or 3 years before Harlow was born, and then it kind of was rapidly downhill in terms of my participation after that. I had to prioritise other things, but I do really hope I can pick the golf back up as we kind of find a routine. And I love sports because they're also a bit of a switch off, aren't they? I know you come from a sporting background, and they are the one time in your week where you're not focusing on the ins and outs of family life and work. It's just a complete zone out, and it's very rare in today's world with even like social media to switch off completely from the world. And I felt like golf for me was definitely that, just 3 or 4 hours on a golf course, just completely zoned out. It was fantastic. So I do need to get that back there at some point. But yeah, that's Ryan Dutton in a nutshell.
Cool. Speaking of switching off, we might lose a few listeners now, but who do you support?
Oh, controversial. Do I disclose this information? I support the Mighty Reds, Liverpool FC. Yeah, you know, my dad's a Scouser, so you always support your dad's sports, don't you?
Exactly.
And that was definitely tough growing up in Manchester, especially when United were winning trebles left, right and centre. But yeah, it's been a rocky road supporting Liverpool, you know. We were never kind of the number one team when I was a kid. It was always Manchester United. Yep. And then more recently so, obviously the tables have turned massively, I would say. You know, as we speak, we're now kind of, 3 or 4 points clear at the top of the table. So as it stands, it's all going pretty swimmingly.
I've never seen you smile as much, mate, talking about the downfall of Manchester United.
Oh, God, we could do a whole podcast episode on that.
Yeah, we'll
I've got a lot of mates in Manchester who would not be listening to that one.
We'll save that. But no, mate, I just want to sort of transition now into one of your biggest passions that you've already disclosed, which is, how did you get into the gym?
How did I get into the gym? So I've been training for over 20 years now, which sounds weird to say at the age of 32. But my dad, when we were younger, decided to get a home gym. He had everything in there from dumbbells. He had like a decline sit-up bench, which was really random. But he also had one of these multi-gyms, you know, the ones where you've got literally a bench press, a pec deck, a lat pull down, a leg extension, bicep curls. There's nothing you couldn't do on this piece of kit, and it was fantastic. And I initially started training because I wanted to better my sport, which was football. I wanted to be fitter and stronger on the pitch. There was obviously a treadmill in there as well, a bike. We were doing a lot of that kind of stuff, the cardio side. But I really fell in love with the weights, and it was just the way something as simple as moving a dumbbell backwards and forwards could morph and change a muscle on my body. I was obsessed with that. I thought it was fascinating. And to be honest, that's been my fascination for the last 20 years, is how weights can change, mould, sculpt the body, not only from an aesthetic point of view, but from a performance point of view. So, I've really loved, you know, being in the gym environment ever since I was 12 years old. It's been great.
Oh, mate, that's really cool. And I know we're both quite big on, we've both got kids. We want to make sure that just as kids can see us struggle a little bit and see us in that environment. Is that something you saw your dad do? Did you see him work out hard?
Yeah, my dad was always into sports, so he was always playing five-a-side. He played badminton and lots of various sports, and that's where my passion started. And he was very forceful as a kid getting me into sports. He definitely wanted to see me happy because I knew it, and I think it brought him a lot of happiness as a kid. He was a really good runner as well.
Nice.
And as the years rolled by, I think that transitioned for me more into kind of the weight side of things. But there's always been that really deep passion there for kind of exercise, sport, and my dad was never really as heavily into the weights as I am now, but he definitely finds it cool and fascinating for sure. Yeah,
wicked. And I think that's testament to you just for being as curious as you are. The need and the drive to want to be, I suppose, the best person, PT, coach can be.
Yeah,
which is wicked.
I think there's got to be a little. If you want to be at your best and you want to succeed, there's got to be that little bit of a passion there. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you did actually mention this to me. Like, if you listen or watch a podcast, you can see if someone's really passionate about it because they seem to come alive when they talk about it. And you definitely do that. I've gathered that from having numerous conversations with you now.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
Credit to you, mate.
Fantastic.
Sticking on that sort of topic of passion, I suppose, who do you really love to work with in a professional capacity?
This is a difficult one to answer because I've enjoyed working with so many different types of people over the years. But I guess the ideal person is someone who comes in with all the motivation and drive. They just need firing off in the right direction. I guess that's kind of most coaches' ideal person. It's someone with that bit of drive and passion and motivation. They just need the direction, essentially. I kind of refer to it a little bit like a Hot Wheels car, someone who's already wound up and eager. They just need putting on the tracks, setting off, giving some answers, some solutions, some clear direction, and obviously some accountability. But I think parents and professionals fall very much into that kind of mindset, shall I say, because I think they are highly strung people generally. They're very busy. They're eager to progress. They operate at a high level on a day-to-day basis because of their work and their kind of situation with kids, and even like organisational skills have to be quite good. They just need a kind of a direction and to channel that energy into themselves and their physique as opposed to their work and their family. Again, full circle coming back to thinking more about themselves and less about other people.
Oh mate, wicked. And I think it's that way. I guarantee there'll be people listening now thinking, that sounds like me, or I'd like that to be me. So I suppose for them people who are listening who sort of think, I'd love for that to be me, how can you really help people? So what's probably the 2 or 3 things that you could give someone to take away with right now? To almost make them, give them that, but put them on the tracks. So if they think, okay, I can't quite work with Ryan or Brad just yet, how could you initially just pick them up, start them off on that track?
Great question. I would say number 1 is having a clear plan for the week.
Yeah.
It's amazing how when you sit there and you plan out Monday to Friday, how much better you are at committing to all the little tasks you need to do in the week. It's so easy on a Monday to say, right, I need to get 3 gym sessions in this week. I need to increase my step count. I need to plan a few meals. But actually, if you haven't got a plan to do all those things, fitting those things around an already very hectic schedule is very, very tricky. So one thing that I get a lot of my clients to do is sit down on Sunday or just over the weekend and plan for that week ahead. They start by piecing in all the things that they have to commit to. Work commitments, family commitments, things with friends and relatives, social commitments, things that they like doing in their week. And then around that, let's piece in stuff like the walks, let's piece in the workouts, let's piece in some meal preps and even planning food. I'll be honest, other guys go way too far with this and piece in like toilet breaks and stuff like that. We don't need to go into that much detail. But that will be kind of straight off the bat the first thing I would say. Second of all is reducing the barrier to entry when it comes to training. Be prepared to train at home. You don't have to go to the gym. I totally understand that people like to kind of separate themselves from the home environment, but actually sometimes in 10-15 minutes you can get a phenomenal workout in at home, and it doesn't take a long time. It's dropping that barrier of like, I have to go to the gym to train. It's amazing how many people won't train at home and they won't get a workout in because they just, they're not making use of their home environment. You don't need any equipment. You can do it body weight. So that's kind of number 2, I would say.
Wicked. I know that were a bit of a curveball question, so I think you've done really well with that. Yeah. In terms of coming away from a bit more professional now, a bit more personal again, because I'm quite keen to know a little bit more about you personally.
Okay.
As well as I'm sure the listeners are now. How would your partner or loved ones describe you?
The first thing I've wrote down here is, apart from being a pain in the ass, it's all hypothetical, isn't it? Because you never really know what people think of you until they're in the room. These are just what I hope people would say about me, and I think they will definitely say I'm hardworking, driven, and I have had people say he's someone who knows what he wants. But what I'd hope they'd say is that I'm, caring, generous. Maybe doesn't always show his emotions. I don't think I'm someone who wears the heart on the sleeve, but I can definitely be loving when I want to, and I think that it's something that a lot of blokes are very shy about. And when I was younger, it was almost like falling into that trap of love is a weakness,
Yeah.
But being a dad, that just changes everything when it comes to your ideas around love and affection, and you become the soppiest guy in the room when you've got your little one with you. So the love and affection, the caring side's definitely come out a lot more in the past year or so. Absolutely.
That's a lovely transition, mate, into my next question, which is quite a deep one, and I were hesitant about putting this in because it does force you to be very reflective about it. But what opinion would you want your daughter to have of you when she's older?
I had to think a lot about this one because there's so many different routes you can go down. But if there's one thing that I really want, and it sounds a little bit cliche, but I just want to be her hero, The same way on the previous episode, I asked you, who is your hero? And the first person you said was your dad. I couldn't think of any greater accolade as a dad than having your son, daughter tell you that they're the hero, that you are their hero. It's it's something I'm really keen to kind of cement in our relationship, and I think that comes from giving them every opportunity and then knowing that as well. I think it comes from being that person they can learn from and take influence from, but most importantly I think it comes from being someone they want to spend time with. I think not a lot of it's difficult as they get older. It's all right saying this like at a young age. I know our kids are 1 and 3. I know it changes when they get to a teenage years and you become the last person they want to spend time with. But my goal before then is to make them feel like they want to spend time with me. I want them to know that I'm there. I want them to know that they can have fun with me. I'm not just the serious parent as well, it was so easy to fall into the trap of when you get older. And I think down the line, it's something that I would love for Harlow to say to me, my dad is my hero. God, just even, it just makes me have goosebumps on my arms just thinking about her saying that. So who knows? I hope that's the case anyway. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's lovely, mate. And can you see any traits of hers that are almost traits of yours? Can you see that already? I know she's quite young.
Oh, that's interesting. My missus is probably a better person to ask on that one. It's interesting. My mum's came round the day and she looked after her for a full day, and she said, "God, she runs and she's excited." And I can remember when you were a kid. You were one of the first people, one of the first kids in the little kind of mum's social circle that she was in. I was one of the first kids running around and doing stuff. So I think she definitely has that trait of being active and physical, and she's running around. And even when Amy goes to her little baby and mum meetings, Harlow's one of the ones who's running around. She might not be kind of saying the most or vocalising a lot right now, but she's definitely physically active, and I think that's probably the biggest trait that I had when I was a kid. I was very active for sure.
So not necessarily the order that I sent you, but if I can skip on a question, which is, what did you want to be when you were little? So you mentioned like how you were. Like, did you have any ambitions when you were little? Did you want to be anything, anyone?
This is an easy question, really, because I always wanted to be a footballer. It was every kid's dream, but I genuinely really wanted to be a footballer. I would be out in the kind of road till the early hours of the morning sometimes playing football, and yeah, I was football mad, absolutely obsessed. Obviously, you know, my team was Liverpool, but my hero was Steven Gerrard. I absolutely love Steven Gerrard, and I didn't know this in the early years, but probably when I was around kind of getting to teenage years, I found out we shared the same birthday.
Oh, nice.
Me and Steven Gerrard. And I remember at that point thinking, it's written in the stars. I'm going to be a professional footballer.
Yeah.
He's on the 30th of May. I'm the 30th of May. It's got to be. Unfortunately, as kind of time went on, injuries, you know, I've told you many times, like my dodgy knees and a few other things that picked up. And the reality is, to be honest with you, there's no way I could have ever gone pro. The standard was just way too high. I got exposed to it a few times as a kid, which is also, you know, some amazing life lessons when you kind of get those kind of setbacks at an early age. But yeah, I always wanted to be a footballer when I was a kid. That was my biggest dream, for sure.
Amazing. I'm seeing the number 5 and thinking that could have been an 8.
Well, that's the only reason it's R5.
Yeah.
It's because that was my number when I used to play football.
Love that. Love that. That was going to be a curveball question I thought I'd throw at you, but no, I'm learning. Yeah, in terms of a bit more back to the professional side of things now, which I'm really curious to know what the biggest challenge you faced is professionally, because I know from personal experience, having that huge challenge on a professional level is a huge test of character.
Yeah.
And I gather from you're quite an impressive person from what I've gathered so far. So I really want to know what built that person. So biggest challenge for you.
Well, that's really nice of you to say. But I feel like it's been relatively plain sailing. I've had definitely a few setbacks. I think the biggest setback and challenge I had was post-COVID. So COVID for a lot of people, and coaches especially, was a bit of a curveball. We couldn't see clients one-to-one. We had to adapt our whole business. That was really challenging at the time. I actually started a boot camp during that time just to kind of, number one, it was because, I'll be honest with you, I was bored. I wasn't seeing as many people. I was doing a lot of Zoom sessions. I wanted that human interaction. And a group of local girls contacted me and said, there's about 5 of us, you know, we've had coaches in the past, we go to the gyms, the only thing we can do is train with a coach outside, would you be up for doing a boot camp? And initially I said no. I was like, nah, I'm not the boot camp guy. I'm not your Mr. Motivate. It's just not my vibe. I'm one-to-ones. That's how I operate. So I said no. And they came back to me about 3 weeks later and said, please, basically, what on our knees,
We need you.
would you do it? And I had a bit of time to think in that 3 weeks. And there was part of me that did regret saying no. And I think the fact they came back to me and said, yes, can we give it a go again? I was like, go on then, let's try it. And actually, I really enjoyed it. I really did. That boot camp grew pretty big. We were coaching loads of people in the local area here in our local park, and the issue was once things started opening back up, I think people fell back into their old kind of routines around exercise and training. I mean, even just that not being as big was a bit of a setback for me, you know, not being able to grow that more, because there was a moment when I was thinking maybe I'd go down the boot camp route. I knew my heart wasn't in it, and I think that's probably why it didn't go where I wanted it initially. But having that option during COVID was fantastic. That actually wasn't my original kind of answer to that. It was a bit of a curveball answer. The original answer was actually reaching more people. That's been my biggest professional challenge more recently. I think once you get to a point where you're a really well-known PT and coach in your area and you're very well respected, you've got a great business, it's then about how can you branch out nationally and globally and reach more people. And that for me is the biggest issue, and I think being more present online is the key to that. Hence why we're sat here together doing this podcast. We're hoping this is going to reach a wider audience. And you know, you always start off in this industry as a coach and as a personal trainer. We're not marketers. No. We're not salesmen. We are coaches by nature. But funnily enough, if you're going to reach a wider audience, you have to start becoming a bit of a marketer. And it's something we've had to adopt over the years, something we're still having trials and errors with, as we did today. We're setting up even this podcast. It's difficult. We've had some kind of fail starts, but we're learning on the job. And I think that's what hopefully is going to serve as well when it comes to reaching those that wider audience for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if you share this opinion, but for me, it's about playing the game to change the game a little bit. Like we almost have to play the short clip, like Instagram, like really short reels to almost just help people sort of see what we're about and be like, oh, he seems nice. Let me see what information he's got. And then they almost go down this rabbit hole, hear the long form stuff like this and think, actually, Ryan knows his stuff, and that for me, I think you are built for this sort of medium, from what I gather, just because you've got such interesting insights, and that's what I've gathered from you so far. And I think your answers sort of match up well.
That's really nice you saying that. I'll be honest with you, I much prefer this.
Yeah.
Like when I've been on podcasts before with people, I much prefer the longer form content as opposed to the short, sharp reels, because the short, sharp reels, the ones that get the most impact nowadays are the kind of heavy hitting,
controversial,
capture their imagination and attention in the first 3 seconds of a video, and it's just not me. Like it's something you have to be quite savvy with sometimes on some of your posts, and it does work to a certain degree, but it always feels a little bit wrong, doesn't it? Trying to get people in and hook them in a big net, whereas this is just it's a much more open, honest conversation. I much prefer this for sure.
Wicked. In terms of, you mentioned it earlier, obviously it's the name of the podcast, but Fit Dad's podcast.
Yes.
What's your favourite parenting hack? Because there'll be a lot of people listening who they've probably got a lot of cool hacks, but I'm keen to know what yours is.
Well, I'm probably a little bit new to all this parenting stuff. I've only had to think about hacks in the past kind of year or so, and I'm a bit of a newbie when it comes to knowing all the hacks. I'm sure you can probably tell me more hacks than I can tell you, but I would say there's 2 for my little girl that really stand out, and number 1 is making sure that you've always got a Disney playlist lined up on your phone.
Like it.
My little girl's obsessed with like Moana and Encanto, and you just play one of those tracks and immediately, doesn't matter what she's doing, her ears are on, attention's there. So that's great for just calming her down sometimes and settling her a little bit when she gets a little bit crazy. The second one is my little girl can eat. Oh my god, can she put the food back? She's even known at nursery like as the eater. She comes back and she's eating twice as much food. And they had over Christmas like this buffet, right? And the teacher, when Amy, my missus, picked her up, the kind of teachers there straight away were like, Amy, she hasn't left the table all day. She's just been lingering around the buffet table, like just trying to reach up and get stuff.
Amazing.
Fortunately, she's not big enough to reach up yet and actually get stuff. But if she was, Christ almighty, I think she would have polished most of that table off. So she can eat. So for that reason, always having biscuits on us. We always have like some of these malted milk she likes. So she'll see a few of those off in a day.
Love that.
That's my 2 hacks.
Amazing. My final question for you, Ryan, is could you tell us something about you that might come as a surprise?
God, I could say a lot of things, Brad, but so what we want to divulge in the podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, let's start slow.
I guess the main thing is, I am, mad in health, fitness. I'm absorbed into this industry. I have been for a long time, but actually my background wasn't in this. My degree is actually in graphic design, believe it or not, which has served me well in some of the things that I currently do when it comes to like designing websites and online stuff and being pretty savvy with the tech stuff. And that was a big passion of mine for a long time. I wasn't massively academic, if I'm being honest with you. I didn't get amazing grades at school. I got my 10 GCSEs, but they weren't kind of A stars and things like that. But there was one thing I was always really good at. Well, 2 things really. First one was sport, and the second one was drawing. I was always really good at drawing.
Nice.
So that led me down the path of graphic design, and always had interest in computers. So that's kind of where my degree ended up going. Unfortunately, after kind of 3 years, I quickly realised I didn't want to be in that industry. It wasn't where my heart lay. But I'm really happy I got those skills for sure.
Very good. And yeah, Ryan, I appreciate you, being willing to be grilled like this and having some questions thrown at you.
It does feel like a bit of a grilling, actually, in a strange way, even though we know each other. Yeah. But no, thank you for some great questions, and hopefully I answered them to a good standard.
No, and again, I hope everyone listening's understood how passionate you are about this and how much of an authority that, especially me in the industry as well, sort of deems you as well. Because I think your approach is great. You're a great guy. So we'll sign off there for episode 3. And thank you to everyone for listening. We'll see you again very soon.
Cheers, guys. See you soon.